Hi Les, you need to unmute. Sorry. Morning everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Had a few technical issues this morning, such as the world of virtual presentations, but thank you for bearing with us. My name is Les Jones. I'm normally joined by my colleague Rebecca Dunstall, our clinical lead, but we've had a slight hiccup in the last couple of days, and Rebecca's unavailable to join us this morning. But what we've done is we've pre-recorded Rebecca's part of the presentation, which is specialist seating for the plus-sized individual. So just a little bit about the format for this morning. I'll be handing over to my colleague Jess in a couple of seconds just to load Rebecca's video. If you've got any questions at any point, if you'd like to use the chat feature, we'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end. If they tend to be of a clinical nature and perhaps best pointed towards Rebecca, we will come back to you with answers for any of your questions. Just a little bit of virtual housekeeping. Your mics and video should be switched off. We are recording the session. As I said, if you've got any questions, if you'd like to ask, use the chat feature. I'm just going to pass you back to Jess in a second. I'll see you in about 20-25 minutes. We come back and we look at a case study using a couple of our chairs here to demonstrate some of the clinical topics that Rebecca is going to discuss as part of the presentation. So bear with us, we're just about to load up Rebecca's video. See you in about 20-25 minutes. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Dunstall, clinical specialist at CareFlex. I'm a physiotherapist by background, so postural care has been one of my key objectives with individuals that I work with throughout my clinical practice, and where my passion for specialist seating comes from. Welcome to our webinar, Specialist Seating for the Plus Size Individual. Apologies I can't be there with you live today, but please do utilise the chat function. Any questions that are client related can be forwarded to me and I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or you can email me direct at rebecca.dunstall@careflex.co.uk. As Les has already mentioned, we're going to begin with a presentation reviewing some of the theoretical knowledge behind specialist seating for the plus size individual, where we will then go on to a practical demonstration with Les looking at the seating solutions in more detail. Thank you and enjoy. Before we go into the specifics of specialist seating for the plus size individual, I think it's important for us to first review the key principles of seating. Now, these are the generic objectives that we should be aiming to achieve with any individual that we work with: comfort, function, postural support, and pressure care. So we're just going to spend some time now just going through these in a bit more detail before we then delve into the specifics of how they are impacted by the unique needs of those within the plus size population. Those of you who have attended our webinars before will know that comfort is a top priority here at CareFlex. Prolonged and/or destructive postures can cause tension on the body structure. So those individuals that we work with who present with postural challenges or a risk of postural deterioration are at an increased risk of significant pain. Now, achieving those optimum comfort levels is what's key to compliance with a piece of equipment. Research has shown that simply if an individual is not comfortable, then they will not use the chair regardless of those clinical benefits. The second key principle is function. Now, the pelvis is the foundation for good sitting posture. Freedom of movement in the upper limbs is achieved through effective stabilization of the pelvis and trunk. Out in the field, when you work with individuals with pelvic instability, what you might observe is them leaning through the upper limbs, maybe gripping the arms of the chair or even digging elbows into the corners of the chair because they are feeling unstable and they're seeking that support and that feedback we have to address that instability because we have to empower individuals to maximise their independence, to transfer safely, to continue being mobile and thus physically active, and to engage in activities that are important to them. Pelvic stability can also help normalise muscle tone, consequently improving any related pain and encouraging that normal movement. The third principle is postural support. Posture is directly related to health, well-being and quality of life. An individual sitting in unsupported and/or asymmetrical postures can experience pain, as we know, fatigue due to the increased effort that is required, dependency and even limited engagement. Gravity and its effects can also trap individuals in destructive postures, exaggerating asymmetries and leading to unequal loading on the tissues. Research has shown that a person's inability to sit upright may result in decline in overall health, and that can be primarily reflected in altered physiological function. So the aim is to fully support the trunk and align the spine as much as possible to reduce the risk of postural deterioration and pressure injury. All those body segments must be targeted. Physiological functions then, such as breathing, digestion, circulation, and even cardiac efficiency, can be optimized with appropriate seating. And the fourth principle we have is pressure care. Posture and pressure are inextricably linked. The body can only withstand high interface pressures for short periods of time, and when the pressure is not regularly relieved, pressure injuries can then develop. Optimum weight distribution and a regular change of position is what's key, as this has been shown in research to be the most effective method of reducing that risk. Specialist seating systems aim to reduce that risk by distributing the user's body weight evenly throughout the chair over the maximum surface area. That opportunity to sit out can offer a much needed regular change of position to encourage blood flow and, of course, redistribute that pressure. I just wanted to really highlight here the need for an individualised provision. Every chair must be set up to fit the individual user, supporting them appropriately to be able to meet those four key principles of seating. It's critical that the seating prescription and the subsequent setup are based on the individual's body shape and size, determined during the seating assessment. If it is not, then it can cause more harm than good. So hopefully as we go through this session, you will gather some hints and tips on how to achieve this when working with individuals from the plus size population. Ultimately, the way in which the chair is set up will influence and impact the risk of secondary complications and quality of life. I mentioned then about the assessment process and how that determines the seating prescription. So I thought it would be useful to just quickly recap some of the important considerations that would be needed as part of that assessment process. So we need to think about the current and projected long-term health and well-being needs. We need to think about daily life for the individual across that 24 hours and how that chair will integrate seamlessly into it. We need to consider the cognitive and functional levels of the individual, the mobility and transfer method, ultimately how are they going to get into and out of the chair safely. And then we also need to think about the support network, because often we will be working with individuals who may be presenting with complex needs and rely heavily on their family or their carers to be able to comply and follow our care plans. So now let's delve into the specific considerations that we need to think about when working with plus size individuals. Some of the common postural challenges that they could present with are general weakness, fatigue, pain, increased soft tissue, pelvic instability, such as an anterior pelvic tilt or a posterior pelvic tilt, and an increased lumbar lordosis. What we're going to do next is to keep those common postural challenges in our minds, start thinking about some of the seating solutions that can help address those, whilst always referring back to those key principles of seating. So first of all, let's look at comfort. Now, as we know, plus size individuals can experience significant pain, especially in their joints due to that added weight. They can also experience pain in the lower legs as well, maybe those with edematous lower legs. Now, things like tilt in space, if it's safe and appropriate, can be utilised for comfort and energy management. And also elevating the leg rest as well can be used to help them achieve a relaxing position. But just be mindful that should only be implemented if they have the appropriate knee range of movement to tolerate it. If the individual has a panniculus, so a dense layer of fatty tissue growth in the lower abdomen, then sometimes opening up the hip angle may be indicated to relieve that pressure. Back angle recline may be the function here that can be implemented. Sometimes we may need to do tilt in space first to make sure that we don't destabilize the pelvis. But we also need to be mindful of those who are maybe apple-shaped, because if we do recline then we actually may be adding weight to the trunk and impacting on the breathing. Now let's look at the seating considerations for function and independence. Improved pelvic positioning and the correct seat height can improve sit-to-stand transfers, reducing the need for manual handling, but also, of course, encouraging physical activity. A negative angle leg rest can also allow more stable placement of the feet for sit-to-stand transfers. Be mindful that an abdominal panniculus or larger lower limbs can alter the center of gravity, causing instability. So we need to address that, and we'll have a look at that a bit closer when we look at postural support next. When it comes to function independence as well, energy conservation is also critical. Those individuals from the plus size population can experience fatigue, so we can utilize functions like we've already mentioned with tilt in space to take away the effects of gravity for a period of time to allow them to rest and recuperate before coming back to upright to then engage in activities, for example. Now we have the seating considerations for postural support. The correct seat depth is critical to encourage pelvic stability and to ensure the maximum surface area is in contact with the chair to reduce interface pressures. Ensuring lateral pelvic stability through correct seat width is also imperative to reduce the tendency for the individual to lean or shuffle the pelvis. Larger calves or edematous lower legs can position the lower limbs too far forward, restricting knee flexion and resulting in inadequate foot support. So I've already mentioned a negative angle leg rest. This could be implemented here as well to accommodate those larger lower limbs while still maintaining the optimum knee flexion position. Weight can then be evenly distributed through the feet. Lateral feedback to the lower limbs may also be needed if the individual splays, so abducts and externally rotates up the hips due to the tissue between, especially in pear-shaped individuals. An adequate postural support, as we've already mentioned, is critical to physiological function, especially in plus-size individuals who may have comorbidities, or even those who are apple-shaped and already have impaired breathing, for example. So we need to encourage the shoulder girdle and the chest to open up and support the head appropriately. Something we always emphasize here at CareFlex is careful attention to basic measurements, and I know Les will back me up here that really the devil is in the detail. When we're working with, we'll say, generic individuals, and when it comes to the assessment and the prescription and looking at the chair setup, we're obviously looking at things like seat depth and measuring from the back of the pelvis to the back of the knee, or seat width, looking at the width of the hips, seat height, armrest height, and so on. But when we're working with plus size individual, we do need to adjust our approach slightly just because of the weight distribution. So it's not just about the weight of the individual, but also the weight distribution and how that body mass is placed throughout the body structure. And two key measurements that I wanted to highlight today were seat depth and seat width. So when it comes to seat depth, we need to take into account the presence of a gluteal shelf, a bulbous gluteal area. And what you might find is that you end up with a shorter depth compared to the generic measuring, to also accommodate larger lower legs, as you may not be able to support right up to the back of the knee and will instead be supporting the extra body mass at the back of the calves. We'll address the gluteal shelf when it comes to postural support shortly as well. And then we have seat width. And this is where it's not just about the width of the pelvis or the width of the hips. It's actually measuring the widest points, which could be the hips, knees, or the lower legs. Just as a tip, it can be helpful to measure on a standard seat with no arms, as long as that's safe to do so, so you can fully visualize the spread of that body mass and get the basic measurements right. Next, we'll have a look at the seating considerations for pressure care. Now, I know we have split up these key principles and addressing the seating considerations, but what you're probably finding is a lot of what we're saying is linking one thing to the next because they are all related. This is just a logical way of making sure we meet all those objectives. By addressing postural support, we're of course going to be impacting on pressure care. By ensuring we address pressure care, we are then going to be affecting comfort levels. By making sure that somebody's comfort, we're then going to be impacting on their energy levels. And of course, that will have an impact on functional movement. So they are all interlinked. It's just this is a great way of making sure that we do target all body segments, address the full body structure, and meet all the seating objectives to make sure we're getting those key principles of seating and getting the user within the chair, but then also compliant with it as well. So going back to pressure care. Now, plus size individuals at risk of sedentary lifestyles and sitting for long periods of time. Their comorbidities can also increase the risk of pressure injury. Now, I mentioned about the gluteal shelf, and especially when it comes to pressure care, because as we know, we need to get as much of the body in contact with the support surface over the maximum surface area, of course, to distribute the weight as evenly as possible. So to be able to do that, what we can do is remove some of the filling from the lower support of a waterfall back. Without that appropriate posterior support, that increased gluteal shelf can push the user anteriorly within the chair and then increase their shear and friction forces. And it can also then increase the risk of falling out of the chair and any undesirable postural changes that comes with that posterior pelvic tilt or that sacral sit-in. We also need to address seat depth, not only for the postural support that we mentioned, but pressure care too, because that pelvic stability will make sure that there's maximum surface areas in contact with the chair to reduce those interface pressures. We need to consider other factors as well, such as moisture, where there may be an increased risk in skin folds, and even circulatory issues due to weight of a panniculus restricting blood flow, for example. Some individuals will be unable to lift their weight and reposition independently within the chair. So again, tilt in space, if safe and appropriate, can be utilised for this. And lastly, we need to think about the fabrics. So on CareFlex chairs, vapor permeable fabrics can offer a four-way stretch to aid that immersion and pressure distribution. Careful attention is also needed to the equipment's maximum user weight to ensure that it is safe and appropriate to use. And remember, as already discussed, it's not just about the weight of the individual, but also the weight distribution. So we might need to be mindful of the leg rest capacity, for example, if the individual has larger lower limbs, or if the panniculus in the abdomen extends down, then we need to think about that safe working load. Robustness is going to be key with uncontrolled sit-in and increased impact weight into the chair as well. And finally, there's also a need to be mindful of the potential for weight fluctuation. Therefore, an adjustable modular chair that can adapt to changing needs is essential, so that things can be adapted retrospectively and ensure that the chair continues to meet the individual's needs. To ensure a truly holistic approach, we must also consider the support network's needs. Seating individuals within the plus-size population can pose risks to family, friends, support staff, as their unique body shape and their increased weight and size can increase the risk of injury. The aim is to reduce the carer intervention, and this will in turn impact on the individual's independence as well and their well-being. Manual handling needs to be effective and efficient, minimizing effort and negating risk. We need to ensure compatibility with equipment for manual handling and personal care equipment, shower chairs, commodes, and so on. Powered functions and heavy-duty casters can also make chair use and manoeuvrability smoother and safer for the individual and their support network within their environment. This leads us nicely on to the environment. Now, this is all about considering the logistics and the ergonomics of delivery, setup, and ongoing safe use. So, access to the property, to the environment, doorways being wide enough for equipment, or maybe it's actually a case of disassembling equipment and reassembling it within the property. Are there any steps or lifts available? Gravel is another thing as well that we need to be mindful of when getting into properties. Manoeuvrability within that environment, turning angles, floor type to make sure that the chair can be utilised as it needs to be for daily life. Is there enough space, not only for integration with other equipment, but also a proper use of functions as well? So things like tilt and space and back angle, recline and leg rest elevation will increase the footprint of that chair, so we need the space around it. And then also the aesthetics. In some cases, aesthetics will be key to compliance, especially individuals who may also have autism or dementia, where the environment, the colours, the fabrics, the textures are a key part of them competently, confidently and happily using that piece of equipment. We've reviewed and introduced a lot of information through those slides. So hopefully we can consolidate that theoretical knowledge when Les shortly runs through a practical demonstration with you, so you can start to visualise some of those seating solutions that we've mentioned. But first of all, I just wanted to run through a case study with you. So again, we can start to relate some of those postural challenges maybe to individuals that we already work with and come up with a seating provision together. So Donna is a 32-year-old female who has always been outgoing and confident. She's family orientated and loves spending time with her daughter. She's worked hard to develop her career in technology as a web designer. But because of this, this has meant many years of living a sedentary lifestyle with long hours spent sitting and limited opportunity to remain physically active. Donna is now considered obese with a BMI over 30 and an increased waist circumference. Donna experiences musculoskeletal pain as a result of osteoarthritis from increased stress on her joints. She also feels low in mood at times as she's finding it extremely difficult to interact and have fun with her daughter. Donna is now more motivated than ever to take control of her health and well-being. She sought support from her GP on weight loss and is following advice on healthy eating. She's also been referred to an exercise on prescription service. However, she is finding it challenging to remain mobile as her current seating does not facilitate an easy sit to stand, and so remaining physically active is effortful and is affecting her motivation. She does work from home, but is finding it difficult to concentrate on the task at hand due to her ongoing joint pain and the fact that she is tiring quickly. She's also experiencing redness and soreness on her buttocks. On assessment, it was evident that Donna presented with pelvic instability, pain, fatigue, general weakness, a gluteal shelf, and pressure areas. So a lot of these common challenges that we've already addressed earlier. It was essential for Donna to have a comprehensive assessment with the aim of identifying appropriate specialist plus size seating, as her posture and pressure management needs were not being met in her current seating. The correct chair would help her to manage her postural challenges, whilst also allowing her to engage in much needed lifestyle changes. Following her assessment and with input from her team of health and care professionals, it was evident that Donna's needs would be best met with our HydroTilt XL. The HydroTilt XL includes all the tried and trusted features of our much loved HydroTilt, but has an increased 35 stone maximum user weight. It's a robust, supportive chair that offers comfort with optimum posture and pressure management for individuals like Donna with increased body weight and size. I think back to Donna's postural challenges. Some of the seating solutions that helped her were a reconfigured waterfall back to comfortably accommodate the gluteal shelf, improving her pelvic stability. Power tilt in space to promote much needed energy management, whilst also encouraging pressure redistribution away from her buttocks. The negative angle leg rest allowed a more stable foot placement to assist with standing, empowering Donna to continue being mobile and thus physically active to help with her weight management. Integrated pressure management with water cell technology encouraged maximum support with the aim of resolving her pressure areas. All of these solutions combined enabled a comfortable yet supportive sitting position, not only to match her work ethic, but to also enable fulfilling life with her daughter. Donna's HydroTilt XL provision enabled her to complete sit-to-stands effectively and safely. However, there may be cases where a rise and recline chair is indicated, and in this case, the Ashburton could combine exceptional functionality with higher weight capacities to support the plus-size individuals that you work with an impressive 40 stone maximum user weight and a 25 stone leg lift system. Rise and recline chairs can increase independence by allowing individuals to transfer with limited or no assistance, whilst also supporting their postural and pressure care needs. The Ashburton has reflex foam seat cushion as standard to provide maximum comfort and support. There's leg rest elevation to help the user relax but also reduce fluid buildup in the legs and manage edema. And there's also robust and supportive arms to enable effective transfers and repositioning within the chair. There is an integrated battery backup system for complete safety during a shortage of power supply to the environment. The waterproof fabrics combine maximum abrasion resistance with a specially engineered low friction surface to minimize that risk of shear. Complete vapor permeable removable seat wraps and cushions can aid infection prevention and control, whilst also being breathable and multi-stretch, like we mentioned earlier, to allow the cushion to contour to the individual for optimum pressure distribution. And there's a 5-year warranty on the frame and electrics to offer peace of mind and I guess the confidence in the high quality of CareFlex seating that we're used to. Before we move on to the practical demonstration with Les, I just wanted to quickly summarise some of the information we've run through during the session today. So it's important that we meet all those key principles of specialist seating. Individualised chair setup is critical. Basic chair measurement will be affected within the plus size population, so we need to consider any extra soft tissue that's present. And it's imperative that we take into account the individual support network to make sure that we truly have a holistic approach. Thank you again for joining me for this presentation, and please do forward any questions, but for now enjoy your session with Les. Thank you, bye.
Good morning. Hoping you can all hear me. So we're just going to look at the solution, if you like, to Donna's requirements. Before I start with the demonstration of the chair, I'd just like to say how important it is for us to have as much information up front as possible. Rebecca's touched on everything, but the environment for this kind of assessment is key, because obviously it's a plus size product. The door widths are really critical and crucial to us. So we really need to know detail about the environment in which the chair is going to be used. That's key before we start the assessment. So when we met Donna, or before I met Donna, I looked at the spec and her requirements, and my kind of mind shifted towards the rise and recline, the Ashburton chair, because semi-ambulant needed assistance with standing from a chair. But I had a telephone conversation with Donna, and it's apparent really that she didn't want the rise and recline function. She was fairly confident in herself. If she had a chair the right seat height, she could transfer in and out quite well. So that led us to the HydroTilt. So what I've with me today are two versions of the chair, the medium version of the chair, which takes us up to a 50 centimetre seat width. But for Donna, we needed a plus size. We went for the XL, which takes me up to a maximum of 26-inch seat width. So the Hydra Tilt is a tilt and space chair. The XL is a powered version, a standard. And again, that the power of the independence that Donna would get from being able to control the chair was really important. So just a simple handset, 30 degrees of tilt. The downside of having an electric chair to demonstrate is everything takes a little bit of time. So 30 degrees of tilt with a built-in leg rest, which is a negative angle as well. Let's bring the chair side on. Now you'll notice that on this chair, I've taken the footplate off. And this is how Donna wanted it, because having the footplate on the chair would have impeded her transfers, and she didn't really need it. So we took the footplate off, but just to show that we can actually use a footplate with this chair. And more often than not, a footplate is a key element of a specialist seating system, but Donna's quite unique requirements led us to thinking perhaps the footplate isn't really required on this chair. Just put that to one side. You can see now that we've got 30 degrees of tilt, great for energy management. It's just gravity helping to maintain posture. We've got pelvic stability because it's tilt in space. The angle of the hip doesn't change. And Donna found it really quite comfortable, which is key. One of the fundamental properties of any specialist seating system has to be comfort. And Donna did find the chair comfortable. We started, even though I kind of had a feeling this wouldn't really work, we started with a flat back. Didn't give enough support and didn't quite give enough comfort. Rebecca was talking about the gluteal shelf and how we needed to accommodate that. So we looked at two different styles of waterfall back. One was a standard waterfall back, which are just 3 tiers of a material called Dacron, a soft padding. That was quite comfortable, but it didn't quite give us enough lateral support. So what we opted for, strip the back away. We opted for the laterally contouring waterfall back. So quite a slim cushion. You can take the padding out of this as well to take some of the density away. So slim cushion in the lumbar. Then to give us a little bit of lateral support, I'll bring the cushion to the camera. You'll see the cushion's actually segmented. Okay? So it has the effect of kind of wrapping round Donna, giving her that lateral support. On the top section, kind of almost like a built-in headrest as well. Donna really found the setup of the chair comfortable. The seat to floor height was just right. It just gave her the optimum height transfer in and out of the chair. I'll show you the negative angle, which helped Donna to get her negative angle on the leg rest, which helped Donna to position her feet for the transfer. And again, it was just about the optimum height for that transfer. Pressure care in the seat cushion, our water cell technology. We needed to build an element of adjustability into the seat width of the chair. Initially, we set up here at a 550 seat width, which was just about right for Donna, but we needed to have flexibility to either increase or decrease that seat width. Again, the seat width and the seat depth, which is adjustable on the chair, is critical for that pelvic stability. So to adjust the seat width, at a later time, it's very simple. We just change the arms. You can see if we need to decrease the seat width, we change the saddle arm for a wider density of foam. To increase the seat depth, the seat width, it's a narrower bit of foam. And these are just saddle arms. They're held in place with Velcro. Lift on and off. Change the arm over so you can see we've got a good bit of flexibility and adjustment, and we future-proof the product a little bit as well. If we needed to change the seat depth on the chair, which we can do, which perhaps we would fine-tune for Donna, that can be done as well. It's easier for me to show you this on a smaller version of the chair, because this is a powered chair. It's got a valance on the back, which I need to remove to get to the seat depth adjustment, which I can do. It's just held in place with Velcro, but it's just a little bit easier, if you bear with me, to show you that on the medium chair. So I'm just going to bring this. I'm just going to see if I can zoom in with our camera. So there we go. I'll just bring that across. Everything's black, so you just got to bear with me. You can see that there's a little lever here, spring loaded. I hold that lever down, grab a little handle on the other side of the chair to increase or decrease the seat depth. I draw the seat base towards me or away from me to increase or decrease the seat depth. You see that there? Very simple but effective and really important adjustment to help with pelvic stability. The chair now. And that was pretty much the setup of the chair for Donna. Rebecca mentioned the aesthetic was important as well. We've got a wide range of colours to choose from. That was key. What we'd always recommend, though, with specialist seating is any patient contact point, we'd look to use this four-way stretch breathable fabric. Gives you the benefit of the pressure care that sits within the chair. Also, it helps to wick away heat, because specialist seating can tend to be a little bit warm at times for people because it's quite a close fitting product. So we'd always recommend the four-way stretch breathable fabric. And that's Donna's seating provision. I hope that's covered most of your, or most of Rebecca's presentation. I guess Kim or Jess, are we ready to take some questions if we've got any?
Hi Les, so we don't have any questions at the moment, but if anyone does have any, please email training@CareFlex or pop a message in the chat and we'll be happy to help with that.
And we'll send you out after the presentation a copy or a link to the presentation, plus a pack that will include some of Rebecca's theory, plus more information on the products. That way, well, in particular the HydroTilt XL, but more detail on the Ashburton lift recline chair as well. What is the price? The price of the HydroTilt XL is 3.2, around about 3.2. It depends on the specification of the chair, but it's in that region, about 3,200. That's a fully motorized chair. Any other questions there?
How low can the seat height be? I'm thinking of a short, wide lady.
On the XL, the chair I've got here, it's a 21-inch seat to floor height. So that we're limited. It all depends on the seat width. We have other options within the range, but the maximum seat width on a low chair would be about 17 inches. And I say low, where we go at 16 inches seat to floor. On a rise and reclining chair, we can get down to 18 or 19 inches seat to floor. So there's a little bit more, we can go a little bit lower on rise and reclining product. But if you let us know the seat width, we can advise on perhaps the more appropriate product for your client.
Another question, should you remove a footrest when positioning a patient with the use of a hoist?
I wouldn't, to be honest. Donna was quite unusual. I'd say 95% of people using, or that I assess, specialist seating, not so much rise and recline, the specialist seating, we'd always encourage the use of a footplate. But because she was semi-ambulant and she wanted the independence, we decided to leave the footplate off. You know, specialist seating, we always use the word compromise, and that was a little bit of a compromise. We wanted to maintain function. She was relatively active with a young daughter, so we left the footplate off. A tip for me, if you're hoisting somebody into a chair fully hoisted with the footplate, I'll show you on the medium chair. I would leave the footplate, if you're unsure, I would leave the footplate long, hoist your client into the chair, then bring the footplate up to meet your client's leg length. If you go short, what will happen is that, imagine if this is a little bit too short for the person you want to transfer into the chair, you hoist somebody in, you put pressure through the footplate, and it binds up all the metal. It's a very difficult thing then to adjust the length of the footplate. So if you're unsure, leave the footplate long, hoist your client into the chair, then bring the footplate up to support the client's feet. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I'm trying to read the questions here, and my eyesight isn't great.
There's another one saying if you could remind us of the seat width and depth range.
Seat width range on the XL, and you can check online, is a 26 to 22 inches. So I think that's 650 to 550 millimeters, or 65 centimeters to 55 centimeters. Struggling here with imperial and metric. Seat depth range, a little bit of this depends on the style of back, but with a waterfall back, because we've got compression, sometimes it's difficult to measure the seat depth. We range from 15 to 21 or 22 inches. So that would be 420 or 42 centimeters to 530 centimeters, millimeters. Millimeters, centimeters, I'm all over the place. But again, if you check online, go to the product page, you'll see we've got some technical drawings there that'll give you the measurements. We can, the footrest, does the footrest have a negative angle? We can put a negative angle on the footrest. Everything I've shown you this morning is a standard off-the-shelf component for a chair. We have a feature or a function called tailored solutions, which offers us or provides us with the capability of providing bespoke seating solutions. So if you have somebody who needs a negative angle foot plate, not a leg rest, because it comes as standard with a leg rest. If you need a negative angle foot plate, we could accommodate that requirement as well. But that would be a tailored solution. It's something we'd identify at the assessment stage. Anybody else?
I think, one's just come through. I will just pull that up now. If an individual's weight is distributed more in their lower legs, how does this affect the weight-bearing load onto the leg elevator? Can this potentially make the joint more vulnerable to breaking?
It can do. It can do. But we have a 35 stone weight limit on the chair. and the actuation system that we have on the chair accommodates or makes allowances for that unequal distribution of body weight where you have perhaps larger devious legs. Just bear with me a second. I just need to check my notes. On a rise and recline chair, on a 70 stone weight capacity Ashburton chair, the leg rest capacity is 22 stone, so it's quite substantial. On a 40 stone chair, it's a 25 stone weight capacity on the leg rest. Anybody else?
I think that's all of the questions for now.
Okay, well, if there are any further questions, email us info@careflex.co.uk. Rebecca or myself will get back to you with an answer. If you need more detail on the chair specifications, check out the website. It's a great resource there. There's lots of learning on there as well. But yeah, if there's anything we can do to help, please do get in touch. So at that point, if we've no more questions, we'll draw the presentation to an end. And yeah, thank you for attending this morning, and thanks, Rebecca, for the pre-record as well. I thought it was really helpful. So thank you and goodbye. Thank you.